scum of the earth. Coming at you from beautiful Costa Rica. Just spent the last few weeks bicycling through the country. Really enjoyed myself. The level of flora and fauna, so the plants and animals in Costa Rica is really on another level. It's truly an amazing country. Landscape is also amazing. But the only gripe with a long-term traveler might have with Costa Rica is the price of things. Now, if you're coming from maybe a Western European country or the States or Canada, and you're just going to Costa Rica, you're going there for a vacation, like a week or maybe 2 weeks, you might not find it that expensive. But for a long-term traveler, Costa Rica is relatively expensive, especially when you consider it compare it to nearby countries like its neighbor Nicaragua. So in this video, I'll be talking about the main expenses that I had to endure as a bicycle tourist. And then I'm gonna also give some information on the things that I didn't necessarily need, but that maybe you'd be interested in. So for me, so everybody travels differently, it was accommodations and food. Now, I don't really cook because, I don't know, I'm usually tired at the end of the day from bicycling. And, I mean, I usually travel fast and I don't need to. Maybe I'll start doing it at some point, but for now, I'm still hiring the services of people to cook for me. And I'll be giving some tips on how to save money on these things. The things that I won't be talking about, but I will provide information, is the cost of groceries. Like I said, I don't cook, so I'll be in the description of this video, I'll be putting some average prices for some common items, and public transportation. So I'm gonna bicycle, so once the bike's paid for, it's free to ride. I only took one bus ride, and it was from La Fortuna to the nearby Arenal Park. That was like 15 kilometers, and I believe it was like 1,000 something cologne, so it was more than $2 US, so I was kind of surprised with that. That's pretty expensive relatively compared to the area. I did an even longer distance in El Salvador, and the bus ride cost 25 cents. So that's like more than 8 times the price here in Costa Rica. So again, not something that's going to break the bank, but if you're taking longer distances or doing a lot of bus travel, that would add up. But again, still not too crazy expensive. But yeah, so I'll also be adding some average prices for distances for bus travel in the description below. All right, so now the things that I have real experience with, and that I will also be adding some visuals of some footage of me in these accommodations and getting these meals to see what they look like. All right, so let's start with accommodations. So relative to the cost of things in Costa Rica, accommodations can actually be a bargain, especially in the touristy areas. I'm speaking specifically about hostels. So there are a lot of backpackers that come to Costa Rica, and there's definitely hostel owners willing to accommodate them with prices that are kind of standard across Central America. So in La Fortuna, I paid $9 for a hostel, which was pretty decent. And in the city of San Jose, I paid $8 for a really good hostel that I enjoyed. In Dominical, I paid $10 for a hostel that wasn't great, honestly, but again, $10 and had internet. Can't really complain. So those are some pretty good prices relative to what things cost in Costa Rica. And the reason why those prices are low, in my estimation, is because those areas will have a lot of hostels. Costa Rica is the most popular tourist destination, or most popular touristed country in Central America. So there's a lot of hostels to receive them. Also worth noting that I was here in late July, so it's the rain season, so those prices can go up. And also I was looking specifically for the inexpensive hostels. So that means they can go all the way up to 15. And I even paid, actually last night I paid $20 for what was technically a hostel, but my room only had 2 beds and there was no one else. So I had the room to myself. And that had a continental breakfast as well. So that's another tip on kind of saving with accommodations, is trying to see if there's a hostel that has free breakfast. So that hostel will probably be $1 or $2 more, but depending on what the breakfast is, this can actually be a significant savings. And you'll see why as I transition into the next topic, the cost of food. So like I said, I was mostly eating out, and I only ate at things called sodas. So a soda is like a place to get prepared food that isn't quite a restaurant. It's meant to be a more inexpensive place, basically the equivalent of a comedor if you've been traveling in Latin America, or at least the countries north of Costa Rica. So these are the cheaper places. On the sign for the establishment, it'll be written soda and then the name of the place. So it's very clear that it's kind of cheaper than a restaurant. And these places will serve your kind of typical fare of kind of local or Costa Rican food, which I'll get to in a second. So that's definitely what I recommend. Sodas if you're on a budget. Anything that's a proper restaurant, that's decorated and says restaurant, you're probably going to be paying like $10 for your meal. Okay, so now for some kind of average prices of food items. Let's start with breakfast. So this is probably your best bang for the buck. When I was in Costa Rica, I was only paying for like 2 meals per day, and then supplementing with some just kind of dry foods whenever I could find some cheap stuff that I could stock up on. And I actually did a stop before Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and I loaded up my bicycle with as much dry food that I could, knowing that it would be cheaper to buy in Nicaragua than in Costa Rica. Comida has been acquired. I don't know if I have enough room in my bags, but if I don't, I know somewhere where I can put it. All right, yeah, so breakfast. So your typical breakfast is gallo pinto and huevo. So very filling. This is rice, beans, eggs, and you might even get a block of cheese and some fried bananas with that. So nice filling breakfast. If you have all the items that I mentioned, this will probably be 2,500 colones, which is like kind of like maybe around $4 US, $5 Canadian dollars. So again, not super cheap, but it's actually cheaper, the kind of cheapest meal of the day that you can get. So I definitely recommend picking up breakfast, and then a coffee will be like $1 to $2. So 500 to 1,000 colones. Okay, and so again, I don't really have much experience with lunch, but I'm imagining that it's similar to what you would get for dinner, which oftentimes at these sodas kind of looks like breakfast, except you would switch the eggs for like some beef or chicken, and then you know, there might be some nuance in how they prepare it. Once I actually ate at a restaurant, but I negotiated the price down before, and it was marinated, the meat, with peppers and stuff like that, so that was good. And that meal, it was like a full course meal with a soup and a dessert and a drink, and that was 3,500 quetzals. So I mean, sorry, colones. So that's like 6 US, 7 Canadian-ish. So that's actually a good deal for Costa Rica. Mushroom soup. And the main dish. This looks tasty. It is. My tip for finding the cheapest place in town to eat is, once you find your inexpensive hostel, once you made your decision, you can just ask the owner, which will most likely know, where the cheapest place to eat is, and they'll tell you. And yeah, and sometimes they'll even have arrangements with the place to have it ordered or something like that, or help you with that process if need be. And if you can handle it, I would advise skipping on the drink at the meal, because the drink will be between $1.50 and $2, because again, it's anything that's packaged or stuff like that will be really expensive in Costa Rica. So if you can hold off for the meal and then go for a drink afterwards, you'll be saving some money. So on average, a meal and a soda will be $4 to $10. So by comparison, in Nicaragua, a meal is like $1.25 to $3. So kind of a big difference on that end. But again, with these comparison, you have to think of the saying, you get what you pay for, and there's no free lunch. Because currently, as I'm doing this video in Nicaragua, the country is in a state of civil unrest. Meanwhile, Costa Rica is very, very stable. So something to consider and to look into. And now my tip for saving money on hostels is, well, if it's already $8 or $9, you know, you're not going to negotiate lower. And most hostels, I find typically the owner isn't there. So this tip maybe applies more for hotels and hostels where you feel like you're clearly speaking with the owner, is negotiating. Like I said, in most touristy places, there's going to be quite a few hostels there. So I recommend looking at like 2 or 3, getting a general idea of what the prices are, picking the one that you'd want to stay at the most, and then telling them, you know, you're willing to stay here for this price, you like the hostel, but there's another hostel that has it for this price and they have everything that you have. Would that work for you? And most of the time this will work. The only time where negotiating did not work for me was last night. Once again, I was in Golfito, And I heard someone talking about going to Golfito, so I just assumed it was kind of touristy, but there was actually only one hostel there, so they knew they had the cheapest price in town at $20, and the owner wasn't budging on that price. So not a horrendous price, but yeah, especially in hotels and smaller towns, if you're bicycle touring, you can definitely usually negotiate down to $25, if not $20. They will definitely start at a higher price when you ask, but there's definitely a lot of wiggle room, I've found. And oh yes, one last item. So one thing that I was pretty happy that wasn't too expensive in Costa Rica is beer. What you need after a long day of cycling. But actually, it can be expensive, but you have to make the right decision here. So a small can of beer, and I'm just going to be talking about the cheaper brands here, the local Costa Rican brands, because the ones that are imported are like kind of way too expensive for me, for my liking. They'll be like almost 2 times as much, if not more, than these Costa Rican brands that I'll be talking about, which is Imperial and Pilsen. So a can, small can at a store, so these are not restaurant prices. At a restaurant you can pay all the way up to $3 for a single beer, so try to avoid that if you can. So in stores, one can will be like 700 colones, so that's like a little bit over $1 US, almost $1.50 Canadian, so kind of expensive. A tall can will be like 900 colones, so that's more than $1.50. So the actual good deal for beer in Costa Rica is the Cuyamas. If you've watched some of my previous videos about what beer is like in the countries I've traveled, you might remember this concept. So this is a 1 liter returnable bottle. Imperial Silver Pilsen. So in 1 liter you have almost 3 beers, and the price of this will be like 1,300 colones approximately on average. So this is like 260 Canadian or like 230 US for like 3 beers. So that's a, you know, it's not the cheapest of the cheap, but it's decent. Barely had any rain yesterday, so kind of knew this was coming. I had to break there because Costa Rica was nice enough to refresh me. It is hot out here. Yeah, so to unlock that, unlock those cerveza savings, like I mentioned, it's a returnable bottle. So if you're going there without one, which some hostels might already have some in the kitchen, so if you can, just grab one of those and you won't have to pay the deposit. But if you do, it's no big deal. Just make sure that you keep your receipt and you return the bottle, either exchange it or return it if you're leaving, and you'll receive your deposit back in full. Sidebar, I just thought of a pro in terms of cost for Costa Rica, and that's the cost of water. So most countries in Central America and Mexico, most places the water is not considered good to drink for a foreigner. They'll most likely be ill, have diarrhea, etc. But in Costa Rica, most places are have potable water, so the water is good to drink right from the tap. So that can save you some cost, because in the other places you'd be most likely buying bottled water. But it is always good to ask the locals if the water is good to drink, because there are some places where it is not, but the majority are. So if you're a healthy individual and you don't have any like immune deficiencies or anything, you probably won't get sick drinking the water in Costa Rica. All right, so that does it for the price of things in Costa Rica and my tips for saving a few bucks. So like I mentioned, it's a great country. If you're only going to be coming here on vacation, it's probably not going to sting your wallet too much. But if you are long-term traveling or planning to live here, definitely something to consider. But again, aside from that, great country. And if you'd like to see some of these beautiful elements of Costa Rica, I have several videos on my channel kind of documenting the various kind of parks and the different parts of the country that I got to visit while I was bicycling through it, as well as other nearby countries in Central America and Mexico, etc. On my YouTube channel, I have playlists for all the different countries, or you can use the search function on the channel if you're looking for something specific. So I was in Costa Rica as part of my bicycle tour from Canada to Argentina. If you'd like to see everywhere that I've been, I have an interactive map of my journey on my website, followthehumoftheearth.com, where it shows the different points that I stopped and the videos of the things I saw and did. And if you'd like to follow my continuing adventures, you can do so by subscribing to my channel. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one.